I'm going to cover the steps on how to assemble a skateboard. If you order a skateboard and the grip tape comes rolled up, it's good to re-roll it backwards and let it flatten out for about a half an hour so that it's easier to work with. So the first step is we're going to want to get the grip tape on the board. And so you're going to want to let it sag a little bit in the center once we take the backing off. And you're going to want to use your fingers just to kind of feel the front and back of the board and line it up. So step one is just remove this backing. And you're going to want to save this backing because we'll use it to help smooth out the tape once we get it on the board. And so again, using my fingers, I'm going to feel the front and the back to line it up. And I'm going to let it sag in the center and just touch the board lightly. And then we're going to start working from the center and working out just to get all the air bubbles out. And you can lift it off the end and work it up. Again, working from the center and moving out. The same way on the other side. And now we're going to take the paper from the backing, and one side is very slippery, and it's excellent to use to kind of work out any of the bubbles. And you're just going to work it back and forth until it's tight on top of it. Once you have your grip tape solid on the board, we're just going to use basic tools. You don't need any special skateboard tools to do this. And so I'm going to use just a regular Phillips screwdriver. I'm going to use a very small Phillips screwdriver to punch our holes, and then a crescent wrench and just a single edge razor blade. And so once we have our tape on the board, I'm going to use the edge of the screwdriver right on the very top of the board. And I'm just going to get a feel for where I want to cut. And this is going to give me a good visual when I'm using the razor blade. So I'm just going to work my way around the board, creating an outline. And I like going right on the top because I want to have a nice angle when I make my cut. Alright, so now that I have my outline, I'm going to use my single edge razor blade, and I'm going to come up from underneath, and I'm going to lay it on an angle towards the board, and I want to really work at an angle in towards the center of the board. And I'm just pressing in and pulling, and this is going to give me a nice angle on the wood so that the grip tape isn't going to have an edge that's hanging out that could get caught and help and pull it off. Alright, and once you cut all the way through, now you can kind of smooth it out, and if there's any areas you need to come back and just use the razor blade to finish it off, you can clean it up later. And now what we're going to do is we need to find the 4 holes to put the trucks on, and I'm just going to use a real small Phillips screwdriver and kind of pressing against the board underneath. I'm going to push through, and it's going to mark our 4 holes, and we'll do this on both sides. Somewhere to push our screws. Now the screws are just a Phillips head, so we're going to push them through the holes we created. And then we're going to connect our truck from underneath, and we want to make sure that the kingpin, this main bolt, is on the pointing towards the center. And so in front, we're going to make sure that the Kingpin is on this side pointing towards the center, and on the back, again, we want the kingpin pointing towards the center. And the hanger part is going to be facing towards the front of the board. So we'll just drop our truck in place, and I'm holding the screws with my fingers underneath, and I'm going to put the nuts on top. And these nuts are locking nuts, so they have a piece of nylon that's tucked into the nut itself, and as we tighten it down and the screw threads tear through that nylon, it's going to lock it in place and keep it from loosening. So I'm just going to hand tighten these, and then I'll show you how we snug them up. So all we need to tighten these nut and bolts are a crescent wrench, or you could use a nut driver, anything to hold the nut underneath, hold it in place so that we can screw down the screw. And then on top, I'm just going to use a screwdriver. Now you can use a drill with a driver bit on it, but you have to be very careful not to over tighten this. If you over tighten this, you can crack the board. So I like just doing it by hand. So I'm going to use a crescent wrench underneath, holding the nut in place. And then I'm just going to tighten down the screw. And we want it to be flush with the top of the grip paper, and do not over tighten it. So I would get it just so it's smooth, and we can always ride it a couple days and then retighten them if we need to. Alright, got the trucks on, they're solid. We didn't over tighten them. And now the next step is to get the bearings into the wheels. And we're going to remove the nut from the axle, and almost all boards are going to have two washers. One washer is going to set on the inside of the wheels, and then we're going to put the wheel on, and then this washer will go on the outside and then be tightened down with a nut. So our wheels here have a dull side and a bright side. The bright side is going to be facing out, and probably the easiest way to put the bearings on, we're going to set them, put two on first, and we're just going to take our wheel and we're going to press it down like that and remove it, and then we'll flip it over and press it down on the other side, and that puts our bearings right onto the wheel. We have our washer on the axle, and then we'll put our wheel on with the correct side out. We'll put our washer on the outside, and then we're going to tighten down our locking nut. And again, this has a nylon piece that's going to lock it in place. So I'm just using a crescent wrench, and again, you can use a nut driver, or if you have a skate tool, but you don't need any special tools to assemble it. And now I'm just checking the wheel rotation, and I'm going to snug this down until the wheel just tightens up, and that's going to kind of force the bearings into the wheel snugly. And then once the wheel doesn't rotate, I'm just going to back it off a little bit like that until it spins nice. And now I'm going to do the same procedure for all four sides. So I got all the wheels tightened down, and they've got a nice spin on them. And one of the key things you want to look for is when you're tightening down your bearings on the wheels, snug it down to where they're not even turning, so you're compressing the bearings into the wheels. Then loosen the nut till you like the spin that it gets. And when you're connecting the nut and bolt to the board, you want to make sure that you don't over tighten this. Snug it down, make it flush with the top of the board, and don't over tighten it because you don't want to crack the board. So with tools around the house, very easy to assemble your own skateboard.